Hey guys, Sarah here. I celebrated 6 years free from drug addiction 2 days ago, and I really felt like I was supposed to um, get a video out there sharing some of my testimony and a little bit more about that. And I was honestly really tired, so I didn't get anything out, but better late than never. So here's something for you guys. I just wanted to share my heart. I was a drug addict for about 4 or 5 years, and my drug addiction was deeply rooted in self hatred. And the self hatred was very much so attached to and rooted in perfectionism, which I think came from religion and honestly just this call to greatness. I felt like that basically the Lord had created me for such a great purpose and had given me all these gifts and these talents and this story, and that if I didn't live up to that, then I hated myself. And basically, I never felt good enough ever for myself, for God, or for anyone else. I always felt like I could never live up to what I wanted to or what God wanted me to be. I was saved as a child and I was in and out of church, and so I had a relationship with the Lord, but I believed a lot of lies. I really believed that if I couldn't do ministry and I couldn't be this cookie cutter Christian sinless person, that He didn't love me and that He was disappointed. And I always had this fear that if I didn't use my gifts and talents and I didn't use them to the full potential all the time, that they would get taken away. And so I really always had this pressure on myself to be better, do more, and ultimately I crumbled under that every time, because anytime I would fail in any area or anytime I would sin, I would hate myself and I would walk in such heavy condemnation that eventually that's actually what led to the drugs. When I was on drugs, I felt comfortable with myself and connected to myself and connected to other people. And really, it didn't matter what I was doing wrong or right, because I felt okay. And I was so feelings driven and so miserable when I was sober that I was willing to let go of everything that I lived for, when I was in church and right with God, because being comfortable was worth it to me. And, when you're high, everything will work out and you figure, that all that stuff I want to do in life will get done later, tomorrow. It's always tomorrow or whatever. So, false peace, basically, false hope. Um, and so, there would be periods where I do drugs for a long time, and I'd start out with one, and then I would get grow tolerant to it, and so then I'd switch to other drugs, and then those didn't work, and then I'd mix drugs and all these different things. And so usually the trend was I'd go for a long period of time and then I would run back to church, because eventually, I couldn't really get high anymore, and I'd done all this stuff that I felt terrible about, and I was still left with myself. And I still really, really hated myself. And so I'd run to God, and basically I would just go and I'd pour out my heart and, Lord, I'm so sorry and I just want to live for you. But every time I try, it just gets hard and I fail anyway. And my motto was basically, it's too hard, so why even try? I'd rather just numb out um, everything in life. And so I would go to church and I would cry out for a feeling, and I'd say, God, if you just meet me here, if you just let me experience you and your presence and your spirit like I did before. Because I had, when I was like 14, I'd experienced the Holy Spirit in a very tangible way, and I was so craving that in my soul. I wanted that. And it was what the counterfeit was when I did drugs. It mimicked that first experience that I ever had with the Holy Spirit. And so that's why it was so addicting to me. So, anyway, I would go to church and I'd say, God, if you just meet me here and let me feel you and let me know that you love me, I'll quit doing drugs. I'll live for you. I'll do this ministry thing. I'll clean up my act and this and that. I just need you to make me feel better, basically. And so it would never happen. And I felt rejected by God, and I would leave, or maybe I'd stay a little while and clean up my act, but I could never put together, more than a few weeks or a couple months of staying clean and living a Christian life because it hurt so bad. So, anyway, I wound up relapsing quite a few times. I also tried different medications as well as Narcotics Anonymous, mental institutions, rehabs, inpatient, outpatient. I tried everything. And finally, when I was 16, my dad actually passed away. And right around that time, I think before he passed away, I was in my room and I was high and I was cleaning my room. And I found this CD that a friend had given me from one of my old youth groups, and I was listening to it. And simultaneously, I found this prayer written out, and it was David's prayer from, I think it's Psalm 51, and it might be 52. I think it's 51. Anyway, it's really common. It's create in me a clean heart, O God, and do not remove or do not take your Holy Spirit from me, but sustain me with a willing spirit. So at the end of this song on the CD, this prayer was actually tagged at the last part. And so I'm reading this out off of this paper and it's playing on the CD. And it just clicked with me. I'm like, wow, this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now, is praying this prayer. Like, I felt connected to myself and to God and to what I was doing, very similar to that first time I experienced the Holy Spirit, very similar to when I would get high and I would feel better about myself and about my surroundings. And so I'm sitting in the middle of my room and I'm just like, wow, okay, God, you are still there and you do still love me, and there's something here that is better. So, anyway, I pray that I'm still in drug addiction, and God's reaching out to me and I'm starting to hear him a little bit more. And my dad passes away, and we end up getting a social security check. So we had a little bit more income, my mother and I. And I told my mom, I'm like, Mom, you need to put me in a Christian high school. I said, I know that God is what I need to get free from drug addiction. And I said, I'll be really honest, I'm going to end up like my dad if something doesn't give. And I just know that I really need God. And so she said, okay. And I went to the Christian school, and it was miraculous for me. I was able to put together 6 months of clean time, which I had never done before. And it was like night and day difference. I had all these piercings in my face. You can still see some of these scars. I had like 14 different ones that I'd done myself, and I wore like this hot pink eyeshadow and this crazy makeup, and I had like black and teal hair and who knows what, and I'd gotten all these tattoos and all this stuff. And so I get in this school, and within just the first couple weeks, I stop wearing makeup and I take out all my piercings and I stop cussing and I stop being promiscuous, and I'm clean from drugs. And I'm like, God, you are so worthy, and I feel so good to just be here with you. And I'll never get high again, and I'm going to do ministry, and I'm going to live for you, and all this, and was just on cloud nine. And I went from being majorly depressed to being able to function without medicines and being able to write again. The Lord even started to birth music in me, and I started to write worship music and I led worship. Well, a lot of that was still about works, and a lot of that was still about me. And I had dealt really well with the behaviors and the symptoms, but I had not dealt with what was in my heart, which was self hatred. I was a Pharisee. I was a perfectionist, and I hated myself. And so, um, obviously, that's going to come up and that's going to surface. So, let me tell you how it did. I got in a relationship with a guy at the school who I was leading worship with, and who I thought, we'd have this great ministry. And we went to the principal and we said, hey, we're going to date. And she said, wait a minute, Sarah, you've been clean 6 months, and in the world, a half and a half equals one, but in the Lord, one plus one equals one, and that's marriage. And if that's what you're aiming for, you need to be whole, because if you're not, you'll take from a person and not add to them. And I was offended, and it brought up that rejection, and it just didn't sit well, and it didn't feel good. And I said, what does she know? It's not like she's been with the Lord for 40 years. Um, and so in self-righteousness, I said, oh, we're going to date anyway, you know? And we did. And it was okay for a little while. And eventually we sinned. And we ended up walking in impurity and fornication. And I could not believe that I would go from this worship leading, leader, Christian, radically saved from drugs, got through the death of her dad, all this, was ready to do this great worldwide ministry, really, to a person that sinned like that. I couldn't handle it, and I hated myself more than I ever had. And I finally just said, God, I've been this close and I've tasted your goodness, and now I've done this. Are you kidding me? And so anyway, I left the guy, and I cheated on him, and I did all these things. I mean, worse than I'd ever even done before. And I had done some horrible things before, especially on drugs. And I mean, I got worse. I started walking in practicing homosexuality. I obtained a felony on my record. I just did all these horrible things. And so, anyway, this guy actually kept taking me back, and he said something that I'd not really ever heard before and that I was so hungry to hear. And he said, Sarah, it's not who you are. It's not who you are. I forgive you, and I'm going to love you through this. And so that was the first tangible experience that I had with the forgiveness and the mercy of God, and someone speaking to who I was and not what I did. And so, anyway, went on, and he kept taking me back. Well, finally, I got to the point where I seriously was on the road to death. There's some nitty gritty details. I did experiment with heroin, some different things, but I mean, even worse. And at that point, this guy said, I can't talk to you anymore. I love you, and I have to let you go. Um, and so, really, that rejection set in, because at that point, he was my God and he was my idol. And so, I really just felt rejected by God, and also like I'd messed up, basically the best thing that had ever happened to me. And it led me to the deepest parts of my addiction. And I did the ugliest things I'd ever done in my whole life, to where I finally cried out to God and I said, Lord, I can't do this. I can't live for you. And honestly, I don't even want to, because it's so hard. It sucks so much. I said, would you just take my life, please? I want to die. I'd never kill myself, but I want you to take me. Just like you took my dad home, I want to die the same way. I want out of here. And I ended up one day, it was April 6th, 2010, sitting down to write a letter to the guy that I was in a relationship with, trying to justify really and forgive myself the way that he had forgiven me. And so I started writing, when I did this, I didn't even realize yet that I was a drug addict. And I didn't realize that I hadn't accepted that my dad had died. And all this was going on, and I'm so sorry. You're right. It's not who I am, and all of this. And actually, this turned into a 35-page journaling. At the time, I thought it was the start of an autobiography, and really what it was it started with that chunk of my life, and I started writing back and back and back and back all the way to my childhood. And I saw my life from an aerial perspective, and I saw that the devil was there to kill, to steal, and to destroy. And that so many times, knowingly and unknowingly, I partnered with him, and I chose death, and I chose all these things. And every single time, God protected me, and he preserved my life. I should have been dead. I should have wound up in prison. I should have been pregnant. I should have been killed. I should have been banned from the church, like exiled from every relationship, banished from my family, all these things. But I was sitting in my room on April 6th, okay, a mess, a mess. Like the prostitute in the Bible. I mean, the lowest of the low, the dirtiest, the most manipulative, messed up person. And I saw God loved me. And it wasn't about what I could do for him, it was about what he had already done and what he said. And so finally, I saw it and I got hit with a revelation of the love of God. And I go, wow, you are who you say you are, and you're worthy. And I've partnered with the enemy so many times, and you've protected me, and you've saved my life. I said, I just want to know who you are. It's not about what I can do for you anymore. It's not about what ministry or religion or anything. God, I just want to know you. I don't care how much it hurts anymore. I don't care what I look like. I want to know you. And I said, don't let me get high anymore, God. And I didn't. And that was the beginning of my deliverance. And after that, I found a mentor and a counselor, and I began to just confess the true state of my heart. And it was like I really finally got a revelation of that verse that I prayed from Psalms, create in me a clean heart, O God. Because when David prayed that, he wasn't man after God's own heart like you here. He was David that just committed adultery with Bathsheba, and he was crying out to God, saying, I'm wicked. There's no good thing in me but you. God, I need you to give me a new heart. And I finally got it. I go, God, I am wicked. I am seriously a mess. It was like Nehemiah 9:33, where it goes, God, you have been faithful and I have been wrong and wicked. And that banner was put over my life once and for all. And from that point, I wasn't perfect. I messed up, but no longer did I walk in condemnation. I finally got a revelation that God hated my sin, but he loved me. He loved me. And that the reason he hated my sin is because of what it did to me. And when I would mess up and when I would fail, he wanted me to run to him and not away from him. He says, I'm strong in your weakness. And he says that I can run to him because he's been tested and tried in every way, yet he was without sin. So, not to say, hey, you have to be just like me all in your own strength, but to say, come to me. Come to me, I can help you with this. And so, anyway, I got a deliverance counselor after that, and I just started confessing all this stuff that I've done and the way that the state that my heart was in, and all these things. And I wasn't condemned anymore. I'm like, God, this stuff is surfacing and these sins are coming out because these sins are symptoms of things in my heart that you want to heal. And so I know that I will never, ever, ever get high again. I know I sin every single day and I fall short of the glory of God because we all do. And I'm still sorting a lot of things out. And the Lord is so, so merciful still. And anyway, I just know ever since April 6th, 2010, I'm done. I'm done with drugs and I'm done with self hatred. And I am knowing more and more the God who knows me.